do Albert Einstein, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Warren Buffett, my cousin, and our dog have in common?
It's that they're Gemini.
Hello and welcome back to our channel, Atma Occult,
where we compile useful information from classical occult traditions to help you get more out of life.
Before we answer that question for you, make sure you hit that subscribe button.
It really helps us out.
It really helps us out. Anyway, the answer is they are all
Gemini.
Gemini ascendant specifically. You won't know anything about my cousin, but that doesn't matter, especially once you find out what we have to say about Geminis. And we actually don't know if our dog is a Gemini ascendant.
But he does have the sun and a few other planets in Gemini, so it applies.
Which is why we always say if you have a large cluster of planets in a certain sign, that also will bring out a lot of that energy.
Yeah, and so this video would be for anyone who has their ascendant, moon, or sun in the sign of Gemini or a cluster of planets, or they're going through the Dasha, the major time period of a planet placed in the sign of Gemini.
So just as a quick overview, Gemini is an air sign. It's a dual sign, which is partly why a lot of this is going to make sense, and to me actually makes Gemini the trickiest
very tricky
ascendant to kind of pinpoint.
Don't trust them.
I love my cousin. If she ever sees this video, I trust my cousin. It's also a masculine sign. It's the original third house of the primordial zodiac sign, which has to do with a lot of things, but it has to do with a lot of things, but definitely a lot with communication. And
being the third house of the original birth chart, the Kalapurush Kundli, that is considered a kama house. And kama in Sanskrit means sensory pleasure. It can mean sex, but it can also mean just enjoyment, fulfillment of desire in general. So all those significations of the original third house are going to manifest through the sign of Gemini, even if it is anywhere else in your birth chart.
Gemini is ruled by Mercury. And it is symbolized by twins, but a male and a female twin, which when we get more into the details about Gemini, it'll make a lot of sense, and especially with that dual nature sign.
So the Sanskrit word for the sign of Gemini is Mithuna, which can mean couple, and it can also mean sex. And that's going to come up a few times in this video as we're talking about the significations of Gemini. And also, before we get started, it can be really helpful to list some of the classical significations of the planet Mercury as the ruler of the sign of Gemini, because all those significations of the planet which rules this sign will kind of manifest through the sign in a lot of different ways. So Mercury signifies education, the ability to communicate, skills of any kind. So like if you acquire skills, especially through education, those are signified by Mercury. Intelligence, especially the ability to like think and make decisions. Friends in general. Relatives. Sports fields or parks. So in Brihat Parashara Hora Shastra, every planet is stated as having a place of residence or a place where that planet resides. And for Mercury, it's what's referred to as the sporting ground. So you can think of like a football field or the pitch, the soccer field, or like a park. And those places are blanketed by green grass, which is signified by Mercury as well. And Mercury loves games. Mm-hmm. Also princes. And you might think that that might not apply in our modern world, but one of the ways that this can manifest is if there's an affliction to Mercury, or if Mercury is kind of being a little bit naughty in a person's chart, it can manifest as Machiavellianism. The word Machiavellian comes from Machiavelli, who wrote a book called The Prince, which was about manipulating the subjects of a kingdom and perpetuating colonialism. So it's a very manipulative book that teaches people how to get what they want. And that activity of getting what you want, especially by saying the right thing, is referred to as Machiavellianism, and that is ruled by Mercury. Also, anything related to Vishnu or Buddha can be said to be related to the planet Mercury.
Which Mercury in Sanskrit is...
Mercury in Sanskrit is called Buddha, but with one D rather than the two Ds that are in the name of the Buddha incarnation of Vishnu.
So the third house, which is what Gemini represents in the original birth chart, the primordial birth chart, Gemini naturally rules this house, which governs intellect, communication, courage, siblings, and travel. And it's more shorter distance travel versus longer distance travel, which is usually seen from the 9th house.
Yeah, so the third house is like, rather than going on a pilgrimage or a big trek or something, or going across the country, the third house kind of travel is almost, you can think of like a mailman, like going around the neighborhood every day.
Yeah.
Or like, you know, going to the store.
Yeah,
or
you driving
like
to and from work.
Yeah.
You know, just kind of like the short distance travels that are a little bit more daily.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also represented by the third house would be storytelling abilities, strong bonds with your siblings or peers, because the third house represents siblings, and peers to an extent as well. Especially
the immediate younger sibling.
Yes, because I think the immediate older would be the 11th.
11th house. Yeah.
So Gemini is an air element. Air signs are known for their mental agility, their ability to be extremely social, and very adaptable. Geminis thrive in stimulating conversations. They love to exchange ideas. They're often very playful, humorous. Definitely you're going to find they love to debate.
Yeah, and one of the ways that you can kind of make sure or tell for sure that a person is a Gemini person, they are going to be extremely talkative.
Yes, and that has to do, of course, with...
And communicating, texting, writing, email.
Social media.
That's the third house. So,
yeah.
And Mercury represents speech.
And quick speech. So that's like... yeah, they're those... They're also those people probably in your X feed or, you know, social media like Facebook or Instagram that are constantly posting a lot. That's a very Gemini quality, especially with that influence of Mercury. Mercury also gives Geminis that very sharp mind and quick wit. They're very curious. They love to learn, so they like to ask a lot of questions, seek new information, new experiences. Mercury can also make a Gemini very, very good at business negotiations and networking. We've talked about some of other signs that are dual nature. Virgo.
Sagittarius.
And
Pisces.
Sorry, I lost my train of thought even though. Thank you. So that dual nature of a Gemini makes them multifaceted. That means they could also switch between moods very often. So they might be happy one minute and then kind of mad the next minute, then, you know, sad the next minute, and then back to happy. They can have a lot of different interests and a lot of different perspectives.
And because of this dual nature and some of the other things we listed, like it being an air sign, and also because the symbol of the sign is the male and female twins, compared to the other dual signs, Gemini is considered the most dual natured out of all the dual signs of the zodiac. So it's a male sign.
It's
because it's an odd numbered sign. In the original
Right.
zodiac, it would be 1, 2, 3 is Gemini. So because it's 3, it's a masculine sign. So it can impart masculine qualities. However, because of how dual it is.
Yes, and because it's represented by both a male and a female, it's almost it kind of becomes very neutral, or it can kind of switch very easily between a more masculine or a more feminine kind of person or quality.
And you can think of Gemini you can think of all the dual signs like this, but Gemini more than any other sign. You can think of them almost as having like a line going through their self or their personality.
Split,
and sometimes it's going to be over here and sometimes it's going to be over here.
Yeah, they're very split. And that's why you got those mood swings and like the different perspectives and personalities, and they move between these very, very quickly because Mercury is a very quick-natured planet. So some may say they could be two-faced. I know that is a negative connotation that I have heard a lot of people describing Geminis as. Of course,
they're not doing it on purpose.
They're not
necessarily.
They're
could
not
be, but not.
They could be, and if there's an affliction, of course, to Mercury or the sign of Gemini, then this can become more intentional and purposeful, and with kind of a harming
Machiavellian,
quality to it, but. Innately, they kind of have just two sides to them, and maybe one moment they're really deeply analytical, but the next they're just really lighthearted and just want to have fun and not take anything serious.
Yeah.
If you are feeling these things because you have a lot of Gemini energy, try not to allow these kind of constant changes that happen internally frustrate you or confuse you, because actually you can use this trait to your advantage if you just kind of learn to channel it. Being a little bit of everything is actually a really great quality. It can make you a jack of all trades. You've heard that term before, someone who kind of is just good at everything or very well-rounded.
And like we said, Mercury rules skills, so this is something that you can probably acquire skills very easily. So collecting skills, also the third house naturally represents talents in general. So acquiring skills and talents is going to be something that's somewhat natural for a Gemini person.
Yes. Geminis are actually quite good at multitasking. Even though they're kind of all over the place back and forth, they actually can handle the multitasking of different things very well, whereas you might think it would be very hard for them to do many things at once.
This person can actually do it successfully
exactly.
in most cases.
And Mercury is the fastest moving planet. So this is another reason why Geminis are very quick thinkers, and why their attention is never really just on one thing, but more on multiple things at the same time. Typically, people trying to multitask or handle a lot of different things at once get very overwhelmed. But the thing about Geminis is they're easily bored. So kind of focusing on a lot of different things or having a lot of different things going on at once or in their life is actually really good for them, because they like to be entertained. They like to have their mind being very active. So to prevent boredom or any sort of detachment, it's good to kind of allow this quality if you're a Gemini individual.
A lot of mental stimulation required.
Yeah.
And you can kind of think of a Gemini person as like, you can be that person that's in the office and is working on something or watching or consuming something that you need to do for work, and at the same time you have an earbud in that's like playing an audiobook or music, and you might, as if you're not a Gemini and you're observing this, it's like, what is going on? How can this person possibly be productive? But the Gemini person can do it because it's like they have two. It's almost like like a chameleon has those eyes that go in two directions at the same time. So they're like focusing on two different things at the same time.
But in one brain still.
Yeah, I think a Gemini person kind of has that ability.
Yeah, and
not necessarily to move their eyes like that, but to pay attention successfully to two different things.
Yeah, and I've certainly noticed that like people are completely focused on, you know, the computer and the work they're doing, but they're also listening to a podcast at the exact same time and hearing what the podcast is saying. And yeah, it's like a really unique skill.
Yeah.
This ability to be very, very strong multitaskers can make a Gemini person an excellent entrepreneur, because when you are an entrepreneur, you have to kind of handle a lot of different aspects of the business all at once. And it's good for a Gemini to be an entrepreneur, not only because they'll be good at it, but they're not going to feel stuck. They're not going to feel stuck in that kind of routine job that's maybe like a 9 to 5 or the same monotonous tasks over and over again.
And then you can take advantage of that dual nature of the 10th house of wanting it to be kind of one thing and then another thing and another thing. In business, that can be really good.
Yeah, and like one day you're working on this, but the next day you're working on this, and you get to kind of dictate it because you know you're the entrepreneur. Geminis, like we were saying earlier, love to talk, and sometimes they might speak a lot more than they listen. So that can lead to a lot of annoyance and frustrations with people that you are engaging with. So just be aware of that.
Yeah, and overall, because of how good Mercury is for you and your sign being the sign of communication, that ability to communicate and speak can be extremely beneficial for a Gemini. However, to what Lindsay was saying, the moon as the second lord is kind of an enemy to Mercury because of this whole long astrological story, which we'll maybe put in another video that's very interesting. But the moon and Mercury are a little bit enemies, and so because of that, the Gemini person can have a lot of natural inclination to speak or talk or communicate a lot, but every once in a while it can get them in trouble or get them enemies. So just be careful of what you're saying when you are speaking a lot. Something can come out that can kind of like, or even just the fact that you're talking so much can have this coworker all of a sudden like, you know, kind of annoyed or something.
So whether it's reading books, engaging in thought-provoking conversations, learning a new skill, you as a Gemini will feel most fulfilled when your mind is constantly being challenged or stimulated.
Yeah, and this brings up another point, which is listed as a kind of quality or unique talent of Geminis in Paladipika. It states actually that the Gemini person is extremely skilled at interpreting other people's thoughts. So a Gemini can kind of read people. So Mercury can give you that power to make yourself a mirror intellectually of the person that you're interacting with, and thereby be able to understand what they're thinking or where they're coming from. And this can really supercharge that communicative ability.
So we talked about how Mercury likes to be playful. They can be very lighthearted, obviously very versatile. They thrive in those social settings. They're natural extroverts. And it's really good if you can take advantage of these opportunities to network and bond with people. These people tend to have like a lot of friends, and their friends probably actually have a variety of personalities because Mercury is very adaptable, as is the sign Gemini.
So they can make friends with any different kind of person.
And they're very outgoing, so they'll talk to anybody.
And so this can kind of be seen as Gemini people really love music and dancing, kind of like being out, going out and having fun. That's something that's very important and beneficial to Gemini.
Yes, and this positive quality will draw others to you as well. So despite their very, very playful nature, Geminis actually tend to be quite emotional, and they do desire a deep connection with people. But they often can be very inconsistent in relationships. So this is because the duality, and they constantly are wavering a lot. So they maybe tend to have trouble committing, or they change their mind often about a person. They're just all over
dual nature.
Yeah.
Another statement that we can pull from the classical texts on Vedic astrology is that the Gemini makes a person very intent on sporting with the opposite sex. That's what the word that's used.
Sporting.
So what that can mean is that a Gemini person can kind of be obsessed with dating, and dating in a way also, like, they're gonna like dating through the cell phone, dating through dating apps.
Speed dating,
anything that's kind of like quick, and this person. And also Venus for a Gemini person is simultaneously the lord of the fifth house of fun and the 12th house of bed pleasures. So this can add to the significations of Gemini. Remember in the beginning of the video we said the word for Gemini in Sanskrit, Mithuna, can also mean sex. So the sign of Gemini is very conducive for this kind of lots of dating and sexual enjoyment.
Yeah. And then their playful nature adding to that. They just want to have fun. Yeah. But it's important to take time to kind of nurture some meaningful relationships. Make sure that you give effort when you find somebody. Make sure you're putting the time, effort, and energy into that relationship to develop it. And make sure that the other person does know you do care very deeply, because on the surface you can, be all these things and very playful and this and that, but you do deep down also long for that connection with someone. But you do have that skill of communication. So if you can use that communication in a very clear way, it will help you resolve any misunderstandings that can come up, and that will actually help you build these meaningful connections and relationships. So Geminis are very gifted. They're naturally gifted in the creative arts.
One of the reasons we can see this astrologically is that Venus, the planet, which is the natural significator of arts and creativity, gets exalted in the 10th house of Pisces for a Gemini person. And so one of the ways that this can actually manifest is a Pisces person can be very attracted to creative or artistic professions as well.
Yeah, so any kind of media would be an excellent career choice for a Gemini. The communication skills alone can make you an excellent writer, director, an editor, singer, actor, because you can communicate and
you can memorize lines.
Oh yes.
Mercury is memorization too.
Yes, so you're really good at memorizing lines and things. Why media is really good for a Gemini is because if you think about the news or media, it changes. Definitely day to day, often many times throughout the day. It can be minute by minute. So this is going to keep a Gemini's mind very busy.
Yeah, and this profession of being like maybe someone who's performing as like a media personality or something like that, it's going to kind of combine, because it's that quick communication, almost like a news broadcaster or something,
right.
All that quick information and communication constantly, and also the performance aspect of being almost like an actor to some degree. It's kind of combining significations of Mercury as the Lagna Lord and also of Venus as the planet which gets exalted in the 10th house. So it's a combination of that natural creativity that you're going to be attracted to, as well as your innate proclivities to be interested in constant stimulation and transmission of information through communication.
You'll find a lot of actors and actresses are Gemini ascendant signs. Shout out to Arnold Schwarzenegger, who we mentioned at the... He does the best Arnold impression. I'm so glad you...
It only comes out every once in a while.
Yeah, and I wasn't expecting it.
I watched a lot of Terminator.
That was a treat for me. So shout out back to Arnold, who we mentioned at the beginning of this video. You want to do it one more time?
Yeah.
Last, the color for Mercury and therefore great for Gemini would be green. We mentioned earlier about green grass. It's considered very beneficial.
Mercury is the best planet for Gemini ascendant. So wearing green, surrounding yourself with things related to Mercury, especially on a Wednesday.
Green.
Yeah, exactly.
It was unintentional.
It was unintentional.
The day for Mercury is Wednesday, so doing anything Mercury related on a Wednesday will benefit a Gemini.
It's communication day.
Communication day. Yeah, so anything related, communicate on Wednesdays. So doing any of those Mercury mantras that, of course, yours truly have in our YouTube channel that will be linked to this video on a Wednesday will help you connect more with Mercury.
Just some additional notes that we did not cover in the rest of this video from classical texts. For a Gemini person who becomes interested in astrology or spirituality of any kind, Saturn, for a Gemini person, rules both the 8th house of occult study as well as the 9th house of religion or spirituality. And because of that, Saturn is kind of a materialistic planet. Saturn is not really a spiritual planet. And also in the 8th house of Capricorn, Jupiter will naturally be debilitated, and Jupiter is the natural significator of spirituality or religion. And so what that can mean for a Gemini person is if they encounter spiritual things or religious things of any kind, they can sometimes have a negative experience with it, and it's not their fault. It's just that's the karma there with the sign of Gemini. So the speculative, intellectual type spiritual paths are more conducive for the Gemini energy.
So we hope you found this information and these tips helpful. As always, don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you never, ever, ever miss one of our videos. Give us a like or a thumbs up.
Also, if you're a Gemini person or you know any Gemini people and you have observations about them, let us know in the comments below.
And if you ever want to know more about your individual birth chart, visit us at atmaoccult.com.
There you can see all of our articles, books, and consultation options.